Welcome to chapter 16 of To Kill a Mockingbird. Today we're going to give you an overview of the chapter and then some analysis. So the chapter 16 starts the morning after the jail cell mob scene. It is Monday, the first day of the trial. And it starts with a conversation at breakfast. Atticus and Aunt Alexandra talking about Braxton Bragg Underwood, the newspaper man that had a shotgun aimed at the mob. Atticus says that the funny thing about Braxton, he despises Negroes, won't have one near him, and he still supports Atticus. He supported Atticus. And Alexandra says, you don't talk like that in front of them, meaning Calpurnia. Note that the pronoun, plural pronoun them, instead of saying don't talk in front of Calpurnia like that, she says don't talk like that in front of them. And she says it encourages them. Note that Aunt Alexandra doesn't want Atticus to talk about the fact that Underwood doesn't like Negroes. This idea, like Atticus said, is that Calpurnia knows that how Mr. Underwood feels, and he would prefer that they use the term Calpurnia, and goes into the idea that if we didn't give them something to talk about, perhaps they wouldn't talk about things. They want to be riled up. Note that again, this is racist. This use of the third person them pronoun. Then we get into Scout asking Atticus about Mr. Cunningham. I thought Mr. Cunningham was your friend. You told me a long time ago he was. He still is. But last night he wanted to hurt you. Mr. Cunningham's basically a good man, he said. He just has his blind spots, along with the rest of us. A mob's always made up of people. Every mob in every little southern town is always made up of people, you know. Doesn't say much for them, does it? I'll say not, said Jim. So it took an 8-year-old child to bring them to their senses, didn't it? That proves something, that a gang of wild animals can be stopped, simply because they're still human. Maybe we need a police force of children. You children last night made Walter Cunningham stand in my shoes for a minute. That was enough. So you got a couple things here. One, we're going back to the lesson in chapter 3. Atticus says to really understand another person, you must walk around in their skin. The children, particularly Scout, made Walter Cunningham realize that for a moment, put himself in Atticus's position. They both care for their children. The other thing is the mad dog that I talked about. Wild animals. A mob, a gang of wild animals can be stopped. A mob can be stopped because it's human. It's not, it is not wild animals. It's something more. And then we got Deal busts in. It's all over town this morning, he announced. All how we held off 100 folks with our bare hands. Of course, this is Dill's exaggeration. And then we get this trial that is happening, and there are crowds of people coming to it like it's a carnival. You have Mennonites, you have ex-billops, you even have Mr. Dolphus Raymond. Dolphus Raymond is a man who married an African-American woman and has children with her. He's sort of an outsider, strange. He's rumored to drink whiskey out of a brown paper bag all day long. Mrs. Maudie compares this festival, this crowd of people going to town to watch this trial like as a Roman carnival. Roman carnival was a carnival in the Middle Ages, that a public celebration that lasted about 8 days. It was kind of like Mardi Gras, came after Lent. It's a spectacle. It's not really a trial. It's a spectacle. It's something for some. It's entertainment for people. It's it's like reality TV before there was TV. Note that X Billups is a man whose first name is X because at the hospital his parents could not write or read, so they just signed it X. The kids go to see the trial, but they can't get in because it's filled up, and you have Reverend Sykes asking him to go up into the color section and to hang out with him, um, to watch the trial. And so that's really what the entire chapter is about, the aftermath of the mob scene and the new mob scene that's going to this court trial. So real quick, let's get into some analysis here. I want to talk about the differences real quick between prejudice and racism. And I've been throwing both words out, but we really haven't talked about what prejudice is and what racism is. Prejudice refers to a preconceived idea about a particular group or individual. Racism involves an unequal distribution of power on a basis of race. So, prejudice is a perceived opinion not based on reason or actual experience. Racism involves an unequal distribution of power on a basis of race. Note that in racism, in this chapter, the black people, the African Americans in this chapter, have to wait for all the white people to enter the courthouse first before they can go in. You also have this segregation in the courthouse. The white individuals, Caucasians, are able to sit in the downstairs. The African Americans, the black people, have to sit in the balcony. Sort of the less cheaper, not as the seats where you can't see as well as what's going on. So those are both based on this power structure. You also have some allusions here. You have allusions to Braxton Bragg, Mr. Braxton Bragg Underwood. Note that Braxton Bragg was a Confederate general. According to most scholars, he was the worst general in the entire Civil War on either side, the Confederates or Unions. He lost every single battle except for Chickamauga. And the Chickamauga battle, cost him a lot of men. He lacked imagination on the battlefield. His one strategy really was the frontal attack. A frontal attack charges a position. It's not very successful unless you have overwhelming odds, and the Confederates did not have overwhelming odds. This suggests something about Mr. Underwood himself. It suggests something about his lack of imagination, particularly if you think about the way he runs his newspaper. He lets the articles come to him. He doesn't really go out and search for articles. He lets the articles come to him, and then he sort of writes it. Atticus says naming people after Confederate generals turns them into slow, steady drinkers. Note that Mr. Underwood also drinks cherry wine all day long. But at the same time, he is on Atticus's side. Perhaps, even though he despises Negroes, he's on Atticus's side. You also have the allusion to the Roman carnival. Again, as I said, it's the Middle Ages public celebration that lasted 8 days right before Lent. This shows how much of the spectacle of this trial is. Miss Maudie won't go to it. She says that even though it's open to the public, it's not right for her to go and watch that poor man, as she said, on trial for his life. The courthouse itself is described as like Arlington. Arlington was Robert E. Lee's home in Virginia. Robert E. Lee was the leader of the Confederate forces. Note that and so it's a symbol of the Confederacy. Note that the Arlington was taken over by Union forces and turned into a cemetery, a national cemetery, to celebrate the heroes. First, the heroes of the Civil War that fought for freedom, particularly the freedom of the nation and African Americans. Atticus is fighting for freedom, freedom of Tom Robinson, but also freedom to end sort of this segregation, Jim Crow in the South. All that is going on in this courthouse that is like Arlington. So the allusion there is very apt. Then we have a couple descriptions of a couple interesting characters. You have Judge Taylor, who Judge Taylor looked like most judges I've ever seen. Admirable, white hair, slightly ruddy-faced. He was a man who ran his court with an alarming informality. He sometimes propped his feet up. He often cleaned his fingernails with his pocket knife. Judge Taylor had one interesting habit. He permitted smoking in his courtroom, but did not himself indulge. Sometimes, if one was lucky, one had the privilege of watching him put a long, dry cigar into his mouth and munch it slowly up. Bit by bit, the dead cigar would disappear, to reappear some hours later as a flat, slick mess, its essence extracted and mingling with the Judge Taylor's digestive juices. So Judge Taylor, while he doesn't smoke, he does like chew up cigars. Interesting habit, not pleasant perhaps. And then we have this other character, Mr. Dolphus Raymond. And Dolphus Raymond, this is on page 184. They say he never got over his wedding. He was supposed to marry one of the Spindler ladies, I think. They were going to have a huge wedding, but they didn't. After the rehearsal, the bride went upstairs and blew her head off. Shotgun. She pulled the trigger with her toes. They said it was because she found out about his colored woman. He reckoned he could keep her and get married too. He's been sort of drunk ever since. And then they talk about his children, half white, half colored. They don't belong anywhere. Colored folks won't have them because they're half white. White folks won't have them because they're colored. So they're just in-betweens. Don't belong anywhere. So Mr. Dolphus Raymond is going to be an important character, very minor character, but he's going to be important in this whole like courtroom case. You see how it works. There's going to be an appearance versus reality theme connected to him, and his kids are in between both worlds, both the African American world and the white Caucasian world. And so, like Dill, like Bo, perhaps they don't belong anywhere, but also maybe they belong everywhere. Who knows? So that's it for chapter 16. Very short chapter. Chapter 17 starts the court case, and the court case will run through many further chapters. I hope that helps. Talk to you tomorrow.